Hello, everyone. I'm going to read to you today something I've been working on, well, for many decades, I would say, really, but more intensely and specifically in the last 4 months. I've reviewed it with a lot of people around the world. It's called a conservative manifesto, and it's an attempt to begin the process of outlining a positive vision for the future on the center, right, and classic liberal front. I decided to entitle it a conservative manifesto. I'd played with the title, something approximating a manifesto of canonical Western virtues, but I felt that was a weaker title, and I also felt that it was time to make a statement on the metaphysical level, let's say, on the center conservative side. Conservatives are very concerned with tradition and community and responsibility, and those are all virtues and values that have been under tremendous pressure in recent years. And so, after reviewing both documents, because I wrote two versions, one on the canonical Western value side, I decided that the Conservative Manifesto title and conceptualization was stronger. Now, as I said, I'm trying to outline a positive vision for the future, and this is a very difficult thing to do. And this is a test case, I suppose, to see how people respond, because I would like people to respond well. I would like to outline a vision that's very enticing to people, that wouldn't require compulsion to implement, that would get people on board voluntarily. And so, anyways, this is a metaphysical inquiry. And so, what might that mean? You can think about levels of profundity. At the base, the most profound ideas are theological, for better or worse, by definition, because they deal with what's eternal and sacred. On top of that is a metaphysical foundation, and that's where philosophy lies, and then out of that emerges such things as normative communication and social policy and normative discourse. And so this is a long ways down the hierarchy towards the foundation, but it's time for a discussion of foundational principles. Part of the culture war that's raging around us is, in fact, an argument about cultural fundamentals. And so, well, I'm going to read this. Now,
Well, it's what it really is, in my opinion, is the right saying the cultural fundamentals that we've had since we were founded are good, and we need to return to holding those up as being a universal cultural standard. And the left is like, nah, fuck that, tear it all down for no good reason at all. It's much less a conversation, and one side trying to be sane and reasonable, and the other side's going,
Well, I mean, it's like what we were talking about a little bit earlier today about the, Apple mouse and how they were trying to be like, oh, well, this is innovative and stuff by making it different than every other one out on the market.
mm-hmm.
Just because you try and make progress happen by making things different and innovative doesn't necessarily mean that the concept you have for that innovation is something that's actually beneficial.
Right. Just because it's different or new does not mean better.
Right.
Very often, different and new is worse. 9 times out of 10. That's why so few business ventures are successful. Because new things are rarely better than just the way it's been done up till now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's universally true, pretty much.
Now, it's long and it's difficult, and I have to read it because it's pushing the limits of my cognitive ability, and I had to write it. I can't do it spontaneously. It's too complex. And so I hope you'll bear with me and you'll find it useful. I suspect it will require several listenings for people who are really committed to it, and you can choose to be committed to it or not as you see fit. So I'm going to launch into it, and it's titled, as I said, A Conservative Manifesto. That's a play a bit on the Communist Manifesto. This is a conservative manifesto, so I suppose one among many, and I don't imagine it'll be the last word on that front. It's not designed to be propaganda tool. It's designed to be an invitation, let's say. And so onward with it. A conservative
boy.
manifesto. Introduction. A profound crisis of meaning currently afflicts, destabilizes, and demoralizes the sovereign citizens of the West and the social institutions upon which we depend. That crisis has increasingly spread to the remainder of the world's people, generating confusion and sowing distrust, producing a counterproductive discord in place of the peaceful voluntary cooperation and competition that could instead reign over and unite us. That crisis is, in the first place, the consequence of a corrosive doubt sowed, not least, by the careless intellect regarding the value of the principles of value, aim, and action that have heretofore inspired, guided, and stabilized us. That crisis is, in the second place, the consequence of the historically unprecedented realization of our ignorance about the ultimate source, nature, and reality of those principles, and our resultant inability to formulate and communicate a clear moral justification for their existence. That crisis is in the third.
My political view I share is this. I love cheese too. I deeply enjoy cheese. Specifically cheddar. A good mild or sharp cheddar. I appreciate mozzarella, especially when you deep fry it or on pizza.
Oh,
Parmesan's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Swiss can be good if it's done right. I like pepper jack.
You like manchego?
Never had it.
Oh, gonna have to fix that. Okay.
But I'll tell you what I like more than cheese. Chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
Third place, the consequence of the presumptuous, premature, and finally narrowly self-serving insistence arising from that doubt and ignorance, that nothing but the will to power, the willingness and desire to dominate and exploit, motivates all individual perceptions and actions and gives rise to and maintains all social institutions. That crisis is, finally, use
No need to apologize.
of the frustration and resentment that necessarily arises when doubt, ignorance, and intellectual pride combine to demonize, divide, and exploit, to insist upon an impossible and final conceptual certitude, and to demand recognition of a false and unearned moral virtue. That crisis manifests itself in the idolatrous battles, simultaneously petty and terrible.
Now, are you kissing dudes because you're a straight man or a straight man?
He's like, yes, I am showing everyone that I am not insecure about my masculinity. So I am straight up kissing dudes out here.
Look, okay.
Yeah.
It's not just a hair color. I'm actually this stupid.
Well, hey, I mean, you know, Italian guys.
No, I meant to ask, are you a straight woman or a gay man? And you don't have to answer, just out of curiosity. I am the superior man, so I kiss men.
Yes, that's right.
I do enjoy good food as well.
That currently divide our world in the disputes about identity that lead astray
Thank you for the lurk,
and
Terry.
render hopeless, in the stoking of suspicion between men and women, in the insistence that enmity must divide black, brown, and white, in the subjugation of the education that should enlighten to the ideologies that possess, in the cycle of accusation that threatens the trust upon which peace and prosperity necessarily depends, and in the panicked, anti-human, apocalyptic doomsaying that undermines the spirit of our sons and daughters. What can those of us who attempt to abide by and manifest a courageous faith in the traditional values of our past offer in such times? Not the thoughtless and instrumental appeal to cynicism and bitterness associated with the insistence that our social and political institutions are fundamentally unreliable, corrupt, and untrustworthy. Not the harsh and condemnatory exhortation or demand to accept and uphold a moral code noteworthy only for its joylessness, sterility, and tendency to forbid and damn. Instead, necessarily
I need to hear that section again.
arises when doubt, ignorance, and intellectual pride combine to demonize, divide, and exploit, to insist upon an impossible and final conceptual certitude, and to demand recognition of a false and unearned moral virtue. That crisis manifests itself in the idolatrous battles, simultaneously petty and terrible, that currently divide our world, in the disputes about identity that lead astray and render hopeless, in the stoking of suspicion between men and women, in the insistence that enmity must divide black, brown, and white, in the subjugation of the education that should enlighten to the ideologies that possess, in the cycle of accusation that threatens the trust upon which peace and prosperity necessarily depends, and in the panicked, anti-human, apocalyptic doomsaying that undermines the spirit of our sons and daughters. What can those of us who attempt to abide by and manifest a courageous faith in the traditional values of our past offer in such times? Not the thoughtless and instrumental appeal to cynicism and bitterness associated with the insistence that our social and political institutions are fundamentally
Yes, that is indeed a lot of firewood, Lunar.
Yes.
How you doing tonight, buddy?
Welcome in, darling. I hope you're feeling
reliable,
better.
corrupt, and untrustworthy. Not the harsh and condemnatory exhortation or demand to accept and uphold a moral code noteworthy only for its joylessness, sterility, and tendency to forbid and damn. Instead, the confident and forthright transmission of the abandoned eternal verities to all of those who currently wander, thirst, and starve in their absence. What are the values of paramount importance to the conservative temperament currently crying out for rediscovery, reconsideration, and discussion? An inevitably incomplete but crucially necessary list might include humility, liberty, autonomy, truth, agency, identity, merit, responsibility, tradition, community, stewardship, justice, and unity.
He put those in no particular order, but if I was to begin to order these, I gotta say truth has to be at the top priority.
Mm-hmm.
None of these other things can exist in any meaningful sense without truth as the highest priority. Period.
Yeah.
Period.
Stewardship, justice, and unity. To that list might be profitably appended a set of propositions about the true nature and source of absolute privation, the inevitability of economic inequality, and the practical realities of the individual competence upon which psychological integrity and social contract equally and mutually depend. Humility. Humility is the opposite of the prideful, authoritarian.
Shit!
Oh no! Oh,
God damn it. Sorry.
sure. Did it go down the wrong tube?
Yeah. It'd be doing that.
Arrogance that insists upon the possession of comprehensive and final skill and knowledge. To revere humility is to accept the insufficiency of current presumption, to acknowledge the value of attending to what is not yet known, to listen to, value, and attempt to truly understand the opinions of others, no matter how ill-formed, to strive to gain further knowledge, and to convince and invite instead of insisting and compelling. Humility is therefore a fundamental precondition for learning, for the revivifying, meaningful engagement that learning produces, and for the maintenance and renovation of what has already been validly learned, established, and universally valued. Liberty. Liberty is valuable not because it enables the hedonism that heedlessly sacrifices the future and the community to the narrowly conceptualized present and the impulsive needs and wants of the individual. Liberty is valuable because it allows all free and unique people the opportunity to best confront the potential of the future, to engage in the voluntary, productive, reciprocal interactions that make peaceful, mutually sustaining social life possible, to speak the truth that redeems and renews, and to adopt the responsibility of citizenship and ethical endeavor. Liberty enables people to think authentically and without arbitrary constraints, privately and publicly. Liberty allows people to employ that unconstrained, authentic thought to imagine a diverse set of possibilities, to singly and jointly assess, criticize, prioritize, and improve them.
Now I wanna expand on a point.
Mm-hmm.
He says, think in an unrestrained manner. He says, think without restraint. He might not specifically be referencing this, but a great example of the conflicting ideology of that is what the left tries to do all the time with, you can't say that. You can't say that. That's not socially acceptable. That's not politically correct. You're not allowed to say that. You're not allowed to call people by their birth name. You have to use their chosen name. You have to use people's pronouns. Yada, 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 yada. That is a form of controlling your thought, because if you can control what people say, you're one step away from directly controlling what they think. Because language, we think in language. So if you can control speech, you basically control language. And that's why the law that made Jordan famous. He got famous for opposing a Canadian law that compelled speech. That his public stance against that law is largely what rocketed him into internet fame. And I just wanted to make that point because it's such a stark contrast when you look at the two sides in the modern Western political discussion. There's a side that wants to be able to control your speech and tell you how to articulate yourself, and there's a side that's like, nah, First Amendment, motherfucker, say it.
Mm-hmm.
The choice is clear as day.
And to choose from those diverse, criticized, and improved possibilities the most evidently valuable, compelling path forward. Autonomy. The emergent problems that constantly beset us and simultaneously offer new opportunities can only be addressed by the continual provision of equally unpredictable and variable sets of solutions. Such provision is best ensured by valuing and encouraging development of the widest possible range of productive activities and enterprises, from which variation might be drawn the most appropriate solutions. Autonomous citizens can bring the individual differences of their temperament, experience, and skill to bear on the problem of adaptation itself. Autonomous people and institutions, as widely distributed as possible, are free to vary in their response to the particularized demands of their local environments. From that variant pool, all individuals free to communicate and assess, can derive the solutions most apt and efficiently matched to their current situations and problems. Widely distributed autonomous local activities allow for the establishment of resilient, large-scale, unified systems optimally resistant to the rapid and dangerous spread of any given unpredictable emergent problem, optimally able to respond with timely and particularized solutions. The principle of autonomy, therefore, enables abundant provision in relation to the necessities and luxuries of life, maximal choice regarding the manner in which that provision will occur, and diverse opportunities for meaningful, sustaining engagement in the voluntary, productive, and sustainable private and social endeavors that best produce abundance and choice.
So, to summarize and distill, capitalism good, communism moronic. What he is talking about is the right of the people to manage their own resources and affairs so that a system of free exchange, the vaccine doesn't work. You're right. It doesn't. That's why I don't have the clot shot. Thank you very much for the follow. We do these political streams definitely every Saturday, and they will be popping up as we are available other days, but definitely every Saturday. And we also do gym streams regularly because I'm a fitness nut. Thank you very much for the follow. Welcome to the adventure. But yeah, what Jordan just said there is basically, it really boils down to this. Capitalism is great because it decentralizes power. It allows people to manage their own resources. And when people are managing their own resources, on average, they do it in a much more efficient way than a government does. And there is a decentralizing of power, which means no one can fuck everyone else over.
Free markets best fulfill the need for autonomy, local activity, and wide distribution.
That's that's so naive, it's cute. By all means, hit me with your counter argument. I'm absolutely willing to destroy it.
Yeah.
That's so naive, it's cute. Go ahead. Come on. Give me your best. I'm absolutely willing to spend an hour or two going back and forth with you. I love debating.
Their superiority to all other known and likely possible systems, given that fulfillment, should be unapologetically recognized and promoted by those dedicated to the canonical
big tech, news media, Amazon, Walmart, etc., etc. Okay, so what you are alluding to is crony capitalism. What you are alluding to is a labor and tech sector of the market that has been so propped up by the state that they cannot reasonably be called free market entities anymore. Corporate subsidies to Walmart in the form of their workers being compensated by the government, Walmart exploiting wage laws and that kind of thing so that their employees are forced to use welfare to get by. That's a form of corporate welfare. Tax breaks for large corporations like Amazon. The Great Reset, Amazon getting to have all of the American wealth funneled to it through the lockdown. This is a government policy that directly benefited one of the biggest corporations in the world. Big tech directly colludes with the government. As we know, Mark Zuckerberg has flat out admitted to colluding with the FBI to give people's private information away. And just all kinds of stuff, man. Let's see. So you're saying there are nuances? 100% there's nuance. I never said there wasn't nuance. I'm speaking, when I say capitalism good, communism bad, I'm speaking in a generalized sense. There's obviously things that need to be taken into consideration on how to optimize the system and make it the most fair, the fairest for everyone. There needs to be labor laws there, and personally, I want constitutional amendments that no government money to private entities, period. Uh,
Yeah.
No collusion between the government and private entities. No data exchange that is not related to the proper taxation of an entity. No data exchange between private companies and the government. You know, the founders, when they made the laws of the land, they never could have imagined the technology we have now. We need to put in place a series of laws that prevents big tech and other companies, Amazon, from giving the government our data in an unfair manner. But communism is not the way to do that. That's just the government just seizing control of those companies. That would make the problem 1,000 times worse. It wouldn't make it any damn better. So, of course, there's nuance. I never said there wasn't.
Because communism just makes it to where, like, just the government has all the wealth, and
Right.
basically everybody else is, has their fair share, which is just impoverished.
Oh, yeah, the Great Reset is absolutely real. I mean, it's not even up for debate. These people have just flat out admitted that they want to reduce population, that they want to put more control in the hands of governments across the world. It's just not up for debate.
Yeah.
You know, I heard Jones talking about that book, but I'm probably not going to read it. I stay, up to date with all the political goings-ons because I'm a very political person. So that book really, it probably wouldn't have very much new information for me, and I'm broke right now, so. Oh, nice.
Oh, nice.
Nice. I didn't know. I did not know he was selling autographed copies.
Values of the
That's
West.
cool.
No other systems allow for the crucial and ever-changing decisions about what is currently valuable to be made by the uncompelled choice and voluntary endeavor of the widest possible number of people. No other systems allow for the sampling and aggregation of the myriad of widely varying and particularized thoughts and decisions constituted by that free choice and voluntary endeavor. No other system, therefore, does or apparently can operate in the manner that makes continued adaptation to the unpredictable horizon of the future both possible and desirable. Truth.
Most important one. Here we go.
The future genuinely and unpredictably differs from the past. In consequence, a continual array of complex and unforeseen problems present themselves before us, demanding redress. A diverse, honest, and freely exchanged range of thoughts pertaining to those problems is the eternal precondition for the possibility of solution itself. There are many valid, productive, and attractive ways of looking at and acting in the world, and a variety of perspectives is simultaneously necessary, strategically appropriate, and inevitable. It is also forever the case, however, that disciplined striving in a single direction fortifies and unifies, that an ethic capable of uniting diverse citizens in trust and peace is necessary and desirable, and that truth itself is never to be finally found in a particular set of facts or body of knowledge. The genuine striving forward ethically, instead, is the very embodiment of truth, and therefore the most valid manifestation of truth itself. The humble attempt to advance ourselves and others through discourse as a consequence of listening and spontaneous response is, instead, the very embodiment of truth. The willingness to reach in good faith across the divides of race, sex, economic class, and political temperament is, instead, the very embodiment of truth. The divisive insistence on the absolute relativity of truth can be combated not least with the realization that truth is a process, not a state. the realization, finally, that the adventure of life is to be found precisely in pursuit of the truth, constitutes the only real antidote to the corrosive nihilism that justifies deception, hopelessness, cynicism, and abdication of responsibility. The most fundamental freedoms upon which virtuous states and polities depend, freedom of speech and thought foremost above them, exist not for the impulsive gratification of momentary pleasures, but so that the truth that redeems can find its living expression.
I might have to listen to this again to see if another listen through convinces me. But based on what I just heard, I'm not convinced that truth is better described as a process than a state. Something is true or it isn't true. You can. It is true that the pursuit of absolute truth is definitely a process, but I absolutely believe that there is absolute objective truth.
Yeah.
This is a fork. No matter what you call it, no matter what anyone thinks, this is a fork. That is absolute truth. So I might have to write that down as a question for Jordan when we go see him this November. I would very much like to pick his brain about that one.
Agency. The insistence that we are all most appropriately conceptualized at the level of the group, whether by sexual preference, race, gender, political belief, or ethnicity, provides the counter opportunity for conservatives to reestablish and reinforce the bedrock notion and principle of the sovereignty of the individual, which attributes to each person the capacity to advance and progress in the face of uncertainty, malevolence, and adversity.
No, it's not only a fork because we agreed it is one. We call it a fork because that's what we agreed to call it. But whatever we call it does not change what it actually is. The same can be said of a rock. A rock's form and material realities do not change depending on what you call it. A rock does not cease to be a rock just because you call it a flower or a blurglurgle or the sky or anything else. A rock is a rock. What we decide to call it has nothing to do with what it actually is. I see you've played Knifey Spoony before. If you're talking to me, I actually have no idea what Knifey Spoony is. Caitlin, can you fill me in here?
No, I think he was referring to the fork as a knifey spoony.
I don't get it.
Because it's a stabby spoon. He says correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Those with truly canonical Western views can as well oppose the demoralizing notions of the essential corruption of all human activity and its putative basis in nothing but oppression and compulsion, with the knowledge that the desire to strive forward is in its essential form a manifestation of the spirit of voluntary cooperation, the desire for productive, reciprocal social interaction, and the reality of genuine goodwill. The ambition that overcomes privation and penury, the urge to adventure toward greatness, the desire to marry, the wish to have a family, the willingness to shoulder responsibility, all this is truly and genuinely admirable and worthy of recognition and reward. All this constitutes the basis of any truly stable and desirable state, psychological and social alike, with attendant duties voluntarily undertaken and attendant rewards validly earned and distributed. All this is, furthermore, the most reliable basis for any true sustainability.
At a cultural
Identity.
and societal level, yeah.
A sophisticated and adaptive identity is in no wise established through the mere insistence that a felt sense of subjective feeling must dominate and prevail. Identity is instead the result of continual and iterated communication, cooperation, and competition between parents and children, husbands and wives, friends, colleagues, subordinates, superiors, and the present and future selves of sovereign individuals. Identity is...
Wait, Mopar, we better get out of here. We can't win this debate. Had we called a fork a spoon from the start, it would have been a spoon, not a fork. It's an eating utensil that we happen to have called a fork. You're not saying anything I disagree with or that proves me wrong.
Or that he didn't basically already say.
I'm not sure. Are you misunderstanding what my point is, or are you failing to articulate the point you're trying to make? Because you just now you didn't type anything that I disagree with.
Right. From either of your accounts.
It's the other way around. Mopar, you're ruining this debate, my friend. The friend account is not mine, and kind of sad if you ask me. And kind of sad.
I believe
I
you.
mean, I believe you. Oh.
Yeah, so how's that sale of the Brooklyn Bridge
Let's
we
just
were
go
going to
with a
finalize going?
But here's the thing. This isn't a spork. It's a fork.
Right.
And even if we called it a spork, the physical object would not change. That's what I'm saying. It is true that this is in the shape it is in. It is true that people use it for the function it is regularly used for. And no matter what you call it, you can call it a piece of shit. People are still going to put it on their plate, hold it like so, stab it into food, and use it to eat food. Doesn't matter what you call it. The truth of the object remains the same.
Therefore, and must remain, a carefully and justly negotiated agreement between the individual and society at every level of that society. Conservatives can therefore offer a revitalized conception of sovereign citizenship as the most meaningful and significant form of identity. The sovereign citizenship that makes each person a credit to themselves, a reliable partner in marriage, a caring, judicious, and discriminating parent, a trustworthy and competent partner in enterprise, an active participant in local and distal civic institutions, and an informed, enlightened, and ethical political actor and voter. This is all predicated upon conceptualizing and articulating the need for a shift in the Western individual's moral outlook, away from the narrowly hedonistic blandishments of endless rights and externally bestowed privileges, and toward the constructive rewards attendant upon a mature sacrifice, duty, responsibility, and reciprocity. Merit. Individuals vary widely in their abilities across the entire range of human endeavor. A small number of highly productive people operating within all domains of human creative endeavor account for most of the production and progress. A direct relationship therefore obtains between the recognition and promotion of excellence and the ability for societies to ameliorate absolute privation, to generate and disseminate creative solutions to new and unexpected problems, to provide opportunity for individual and social flourishing and advancement, and to justly and effectively reward those endeavoring to be productive, successful, and generous. The tight causal connection between merit and consequence.
And nepotism. End it.
Yes.
God, nothing pisses me off like nepotism. Well, my daddy was a senator, and now I'm a governor, and then I'll be president, then my son will be a governor.
Means that pure merit can be defined objectively by the ability to undertake the work and build the social networks associated with goals valued by the free choice of actors in the free marketplaces of friendship, community association, consumer choice, employment opportunity, and political decision. Such merit has been validly, however partially and imperfectly, and must remain the fundamental principle governing selection, placement, and advancement in our social institutions. Responsibility.
That's another reason
Every
why
individual-
capitalism is as effective as it is, because it sets up sort of a meritocracy
Right.
and survival of the fittest kind of a environment or arena for people to compete in.
I don't know why I'm
Yeah.
typing. Yeah, enjoy your travels, man.
Yeah. Yep. Both of you.
Yeah, both of you. And tell all the other voices in your head I said hi too.
Yes.
Requires a purpose.
But yeah, Kate, you're absolutely right. The reason that capitalism is, well, not the only reason, but one of the main reasons capitalism is so successful is that it's meritocratic.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. It encourages innovation. It encourages people to try new ideas. Because, I mean, yeah, a lot of ideas fail, but generally speaking, when you... The trade-off in capitalism is a failure, and sometimes failures can be a soft failure where it doesn't really ruin you too bad, and you're able to pick yourself up and go back to a 9-to-5 or try your next big idea. Or critical success. Nat 20, bro. I fucking came up with this idea and became an overnight, or at least within a few years, millionaire.
Right.
Capitalism's really fucking good at that, despite what the left would have you believe. And, by the way, if we had it so that the government was not in the business of propping up big business by offering them all kinds of fucking backdoor tax incentives, not tax incentives, subsidies, extremely cumbersome regulation that you can only deal with a team of lawyers that small businesses can't compete with. If government stopped doing all that shit, we'd see a lot more of that. But no, what do we get? We get the lockdowns feeding absolute billions to Amazon over the course of year and a half, 2 years that was going on. Yeah. Part of the little guys. Yep. Yep. Sure.
To offset the tragedy of life. Every person needs something of true value to set against the anxiety, frustration, disappointment, grief, and pain of mortal existence. That purpose is not to be found in...
I use cocaine.
I like how you said it. Like, I like turtles.
Oh man, I'm so glad I got clean. But yeah, he's not wrong. It's rough out here, man.
in the cynicism, that too easily replaces an initial naivety, or in a short-sighted, narrow, and reactive hedonism, but in the establishment of the stable, reliable, truthful, and productive intimate relationships, friendships, apprenticeships, civic bonds, political duties, philosophical commitments, and religious habits and practices. In the absence of the structure and direction produced by such bonds and activities, the tragedy of life looms unacceptably large. Individuals subjected to suffering in the absence of an orientation towards meaning and responsibility become cynical, unstable, hopeless, and alienated. Then resentful, vengeful, and dangerous. Conservatives can offer personal responsibility, the committed social bonds of marriage, family, and job, and true civic engagement as valid and reliable antidotes to the nihilism of unearned cynicism, the temptation of narrow short-term pleasure, and the demoralizing consequences of faithless hopelessness. Such advocates can remind us all that sacrifice, the willingness to forestall the gratifications of the immediate moment, the willingness to engage in difficult endeavors in the present to build something worthwhile for the future, the moral obligation to withstand the trials of immediate, timely disagreement and conflict to ensure a lasting peace, is a laudable, necessary, and ultimately redeeming activity. Such advocates can finally define a pathway through the pitfalls of guilt, offering atonement through responsibility as the proper response to the inevitably unequal distribution of talents and privileges.
And that's something I've never understood. I've never understood why all these left-leaning people that want to bathe in their white guilt syndrome.
Yeah.
If you genuinely feel guilty for these things of which you actually had no responsibility in, wouldn't your time be much better spent? Sorry, 1 second. What? I don't have any potato salad. Are you talking about those containers of soup? I thought they were potato salad. Never mind. Sorry. Guys, I need orders. What's the next target? I mean, just go to Portland, and if you see anyone throwing shit at a storefront or spray painting something or harassing an old lady, just tackle them. Just tackle them to the ground. Put them in a chokehold. Walk away. Yeah. Don't actually do that. Don't actually do that. No, but what's up? How's it going, sir?
How's it going? Welcome in. First time chatter.
Caitlin, before I was fucking rudely interrupted, what was I saying?
You were you were talking about people on the left bathing in their white guilt for things that they didn't have any responsibility for.
Right. If you actually Target acquired grandma antique shop. All right, boys, saddle up, grab your hot pockets and hair dye. Gonna be a long night.
Oh my god. Now we were telling you to save grandma at the antique shop. Okay?
Right.
Okay.
But yeah, if you're so guilty, if you feel so bad about slavery, why don't you, instead of virtue signaling and tweeting all this bullshit and just all the garbage that these people do, how about you put your labor into actually doing something beneficial for the community? And no, donating to BLM doesn't fucking count. Not a single penny of BLM donations went towards improving black communities, went towards fighting.
Nazis weren't actually capitalists, so that's an oxymoron.
Caitlin, can you not interrupt me for that? Like, come on, man.
It was a comment.
That doesn't mean you gotta interrupt me, man. That's rude.
I didn't mean to. Sorry.
Come
Okay.
on, man.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay.
I lost my train of thought. Whatever.
Community. The West has rightly emphasized the value of the individual, drawing on traditions derived from Rome, Athens, and Jerusalem. The admirably liberal West has properly and usefully articulated a doctrine of individual rights grounded in natural law in consequence, and that has led to an era of freedom unparalleled in its productivity, generosity, and universality. But the highest ideal to which an individual might aspire cannot be grounded in an atomistic individualism or predicated on the assumption that the highest manifestation of human striving be akin to an isolated self-actualization. Conservatives can rightly insist the highest must serve the lowest, communally, in the truly religious sense, can rightly observe that we find our very sanity in relationship to community. Conservatives can note that sanity itself, both personal and social, is something continually and inescapably negotiated. That there can simply not be the happiness or the pursuit thereof at the individual level in the absence of the optimally functioning social surround. A purely individual ethos is shallow, unsustainable, unworthy, and fragile. What do we do when our happiness vanishes? A purely individual ethos fails to provide the orientation crucial for the upward striving that constitutes hope, the integrity necessary to resist temptation, the antidote to the dangerous and narcissistic expansion of ego and presumption, or the bounds of love that support us through tribulation, trial, and tragedy. Stewardship. Those who uphold the conservative ethos can offer responsible stewardship as the appropriate response to the necessity of maintaining harmony in our relationship with the natural world upon which our lives ultimately depend. This is an extension of the proper canonical response to the treasures of the historical past. That which is valuable should be recognized, valued, maintained, guarded, and passed on down the generational chain. The scope of human activities has expanded in recent decades to a scale that makes of those activities a genuine planetary force. This presents us with real dangers as well as unparalleled opportunities. Panicked, apocalyptic thinking in relation to the former demoralizes, invites a careless and self-serving demonization and derogation, and justifies the kind of impulsive, incautious, reactive, global response that can easily produce unforeseen problems of the same magnitude or greater than the original problem. Thoughtful stewards of the natural world, governed by the doctrines intrinsic to the Western canon, can, as an alternative, recognize the particulars of the problems characterizing the relationship between our industrial culture and the natural world, can confidently note the fact that the human ingenuity most effectively manifested in free societies has and might endlessly and ever more efficiently continue to ameliorate poverty and rectify excessive inequality, can encourage conceptualization of the human population and its constituent individuals as a net good in the planetary context, can deliver to young people first and foremost the message that people of faith, courage, and goodwill can manage the very real problems that confront us and make the future not the apocalypse that is always threatening, but the eternally productive and abundant garden that we may all tend and inhabit. justice. Every individual who strives upward in the optimal and socially beneficial manner deserves and must be granted the benefits attendant upon the consequences of that striving. This is the judicious and discerning recognition, rewarding, and reinforcement of productive and generous ability. This is the justice that fosters and maintains that productive generosity at the individual and the social level. This is the justice that applies discriminating attention to the endeavors and utterances of past and present and enables constant separation of wheat from chaff. This is the justice that has in the past and must continue to be in the future the irreplaceable, necessary, and corrective complement to what would otherwise be the incautious, too forgiving, and infantilizing universal compassion that too easily masquerades and demands recognition as moral virtue itself. Conservatives can rightly insist it is this true and comprehensive justice, grounded in the irreplaceable traditions of our forebears, that has been and must continue to be both available and applied equally to all citizens, regardless of birth or circumstances. Tradition.
Well, that's kind of like what you were talking about
Conservatives must
the other
state
day.
with courage.
Oh, so, well, what was I talking about the other day, Kate?
Well, what you were talking about the other day with the how acceptance and tolerance have become enabling.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, we left tolerance of those tolerance of differences is a virtue. Acceptance of evil is evil, and that's the problem with adopting a ethos of tolerance, is where does it stop? And that's why it's so important to have other principles far above tolerance in the hierarchy of your principles and values. Because if you have tolerance as if it's anywhere near the top of your hierarchy of values, you're inevitably going to tolerate and accept evil. And that's one of the big problems in our culture, is the left has pushed tolerance as being the highest virtue, or they used to. Now it's it's gone from tolerance to acceptance to endorse me or you're a bigot. Be okay with all of my perversions or you're a homophobe.
Courageous faith and confidence. The fundamental institutions of the West are solid, philosophically and practically. The idea that each individual is equal before the law and of divine intrinsic worth is inextricably associated with the presumption of the sovereign citizen, as well as the associated insistence that the stability of the state rests upon the careful and truthful judgment of that citizen. The idea that honest and untrammeled discourse among men and women of goodwill constitutes the eternal pathway to the truth that refreshes and redeems is a realization whose profundity of conceptualization and reliability in application is unparalleled in human history. The parliaments, congresses, and senates where those of us in the West transform the inarticulate but reliable and trustworthy sentiments and desires of the people into the articulated body of laws we all abide by are fundamentally good and functional, but require the wise trust and active engagement that conservatives would do well to embody and promote. Marriage, not sexual satisfaction, is the most appropriate goal for love. Children and adults flourish in stable two-parent families. The broader community is best served by...
Well, and I would modify or perhaps make an addendum to what he just said. Sexual satisfaction is often unachievable outside of an actual loving relationship.
Mhm.
And if you actually find someone who you're capable of having a truly loving relationship with, why would you not marry that person? Why would you not make that ultimate commitment to them to say, "Hey, look, I'm serious about this."
Mhm.
And yeah.
Stable marriage and family. The needs of those in absolute poverty are best served by an uncorrupted and genuinely cooperative and competitive free market economy. The very real problem of inequality is best solved by a commendable combination of productivity and generosity within the framework that such structured systems provide. All of this nests within the overarching framework of the Abrahamic canon bequeathed to us by our forebears, and should be presented in a spirit of gratitude and humility as an inextricable part and parcel of that inheritance. Unity. A house divided against itself cannot stand. Respect for individual sovereignty, appreciation for the intact family, responsible engagement in civic institutions, gratitude for the traditions that bind us and protect us from chaos, and courageous trust in the essential goodwill of others means unity in both appearance and reality. Conservatives at their best are characterized by profound appreciation for the necessity of such unity, apprehending it properly as the basis for the peaceful cooperation and competition that made, makes, and keeps us strong in the face of both adversity and enmity. Such unity also provides for the psychological and social predictability and structure that keeps the destabilizing terror of uncertainty at bay, as well as for the shared communal purpose that provides the very framework for individual hope. The notion that no such unity is possible, or that it is always purchased through the use of self-interested power and compulsion, means only, in the first case, that disunity and the chaos that accompanies it is inevitable, and in the second, that a profound misunderstanding is in place regarding the causal relationship between true stability and productive peace and the principles of free choice, voluntary association, reciprocal exchange, mature capacity to forestall gratification, and responsible action. The acceptance of these twin presumptions dooms their holder to a counterproductive and destabilizing anxiety and aimless hopelessness, and a consequent bitter cynicism, and with no conceptual or practical alternative to the personal wielding of arbitrary force. This is a recipe for personal doom and social catastrophe. Conclusion. The blind and instrumental insistence that truth is an illusion and that nothing but power truly rules has left virtually everything of true and enduring use as a guide to purpose and a bulwark against despair, abandoned on the wayside. The demoralized people of the West, and indeed in the rest of the world, are therefore crying out for the restoration of the abdicated values of individual sovereignty and responsible, genuine social service and purpose, whose acceptance and embodiment make our free societies possible, productive, admirable, generative, and stable. Conservatives who abide by the dictates of the eternal Western canon have the opportunity beckoning in front of them to once again make the case that the principles upon which we operate, the virtues in which we believe, and the freedom we have been divinely granted truly and eternally constitute the basis for the life more abundant which people of good faith desire and which we have every ability to establish and maintain. Thank you all for watching and listening. I genuinely hope that you find the vision that is beginning to be elaborated in this document compelling and engaging. I'm going to add to it 2 appendices, which I'll tape separately. We'll call them a Conservative Manifesto : appendices, which detail out 2 additional topics, one related to poverty and inequality and their nature and amelioration, and the second dealing with the precise nature of the relationship between personal responsibility and meaningful engagement. And so, if you appreciated this first manifesto, then give some consideration to also attending to the appendices. Thanks again for your time and attention.
I really like that.
Hmm.
I
Mm.
I mean this with no disrespect to Jordan, because I think he's a wise and intelligent man. And he probably I shouldn't frame it that way, because I don't think he would take disrespect, and I'm sure he would not. I'm sure he would not try to lay claim to ownership of these ideas. I just feel compelled to make the point that Jordan is not, but he is by far not the first person to articulate all of these values and principles. I think this is the first time I've seen someone sit down and lay all of these out in such a one after the other, well explained, explaining each one kind of manner. But there's a lot of people who have fought for these things before him. I mean, a lot of people, I'm sure, would disagree, but Trump has fought for most of these values explicitly and overtly. Unity, justice, productivity, personal responsibility, justice. Did I already say justice?
Yes.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean, conservatives have been campaigning on some combination of these values forever.
Mm-hmm.
Since the conservative movement in this country really became not concerted, not congealed, since it was conceptualized and its
Mm-hmm.
inception however many years ago. I actually don't know when the proper conservative wing of the Republican Party formed, but yeah, it's just, and it's very interesting to me that Jordan is the one who put something like this out, because by his own description, he's more moderate and kind of classically liberal.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if this is kind of his way of admitting that a conservative worldview is the most productive worldview with which to run society. Or if he is merely trying to hand the conservative movement as many tools as he can, because right now he sees the conservative movement as the antidote to the radical left-wing insanity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question to ponder, because I mean, it seems like, well, like what he talked about with with religion, and how his pursuits have led him to come to the obvious conclusion that, you know, um he couldn't do this without God.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Going by that precedent, it seems like maybe he's come to the conclusion of what you said at first, that, running a society on a basis of conservative values is more effective.
Well, not only more effective, it's the only way to make a conservative, or excuse me, it's the only way to make a society actually last.
Mm-hmm.
The things that progressives hold up as values are actually vices and indulgences of the human spirit that
Mm-hmm.
inevitably lead to decay.
Yeah.
Change for change's sake, pleasure for pleasure's sake, self-fulfillment for self-fulfillment's sake. The things that progressives value and desperately advocate for offer no greater meaning. There's nothing beyond the thing. Whereas when you're in service to truth, you're pursuing something ineffable. You're pursuing something that is universally good, but simultaneously arguably unattainable. Ultimate truth is, and you can say that about every value that Jordan just outlined here. Well, yeah. As far as manifestos go,
Yeah.
9.8 out of 10 by me. I just object with his saying that truth is a process.
Mm-hmm.
As a Christian and as someone who believes in hard objective truth, I can't abide by that. Truth is not a process. Truth is a state. God is the truth. God is the way,
Right.
the truth, and the light. And my ultimate duty is to truth and light. And I'm gonna have to ask Jordan about that one. Caitlin, can you remind me to do that, please?
Yes, I will remind you to do that, because I think it would be good to get him to clarify that.
I'd be very interested to see if under request for clarification he did, because I feel like he might be saying truth is a process in relation to the state of trying to find what is true. That doesn't really make sense. I think he might be saying that truth is a process insofar as we're always trying to find objective truth, and that is a worthy goal. That might be what he means. I really would. I might have to watch this again. I might have to ask him.
Yeah. Well, because he later in the same group of statements, he said that life's adventure is the pursuit of ultimate truth. So it would make sense if that's what he was trying to say.